El día de hoy nos adentramos en la colección de un experto, quien nos va a platicar más sobre Marvel, DC y Manga. Así que si te interesa, quédate en este video y comenzamos. Porque estamos en abril, cerca del Día Internacional del Libro, el día de hoy tenemos un invitado muy especial. Él es un coleccionista de libros de cómics y de manga. Él habla 2 idiomas y está estudiando una carrera para hacer de este mundo un lugar mejor, como lo hacen sus personajes de cómics favoritos. Así que por favor, Oscar, primero platícanos cuántos cómics tienes en tu colección.
Thank you for having me. Um, if I had to say, I'd probably say I have around 100 and 150, 170 between that number.
With all of them, like counting the single issues?
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 boxes of single issues, so if you count that, then the number spikes quite a lot, but I mostly collect hardcover, collected editions, omnibus, stuff like that.
Pues es un número muy bueno, Oscar, porque la colección más grande del mundo, de hecho está donde tú estás, en California, la tiene un hombre de 56 años. Bueno, eso fue en el 2015, en ese entonces tenía 56 años, hace 7 años. Tiene 105,000 cómics y él empezó a interesarse cuando tenía 8 años. Y de hecho mi pregunta va por ahí. At what age or when did you start to collect your comics?
Hmm. I don't know the specific age that I was, but I've been collecting comics ever since I was a little kid. When I was young, my dad, he would buy me these kinds of books. They're really small. They're meant for kids. Um, and I think that's kind of where I started. Also, the Spider-Man movie, the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies are kind of what got me into comics. So if I had to guess, I would probably say maybe around 5 or 6. As soon as I could read, I was collecting comics pretty much.
That is nice. And like as you were saying, like sometimes like people or our dads or someone who is like bigger than us, like in age, older than us, sorry, they tell us like comics probably are just for kids, but they are just for kids.
No, definitely not. There are so many genres of comics, just like anything, novels, movies, whatever it is. There's a lot of different genres. Superheroes are the most popular ones, and most superhero stories are pretty family friendly for all ages, but there's also a lot of superhero stories that are really dark as well that are meant for adults. And there are also a lot of stories from independent publishers like Image Comics or Dark Horse Comics that are intended for older audiences.
Could you give us an example, for example, of a comic that is specifically for kids or that is just like commonly give to kids, and one is that is for like older like generation?
Well, like I said, the superhero stuff, so mostly like if I'm talking about Marvel and really any Spider-Man story, Avenger story, stuff like that, that's going to be for all ages. DC tends to be a little bit darker with their comics most of the time, like Batman, but even Batman, it's still family friendly. Most of the stories, there are some exceptions that are a little darker, like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. That one's a little bit darker. But if you want something that's meant mostly for adults completely, then for the most part, you'll want to stay away from Marvel and DC and mostly go towards independent publishers. Um, yeah, there's, let's see, I'm looking around my room right now. Hellboy. Hellboy is a really good one. Dark Horse, that one is pretty dark. V for Vendetta, Watchmen.
Wow, they're really nice. Thank you. And I have this question also for you. Like from all the literature that exists, like books, novels, why collecting comics?
Well, I like collecting comics because while I do enjoy reading novels occasionally, I like comics and oftentimes people might think like, oh, why do you just like books with pictures in them? And it's not it is a picture book, yes, but it's not necessarily a picture book. To me, it's kind of like when a really good writer works with a really good artist in conjunction, it's it's something special. I don't know. It's just it's you can tell when the artist and the writer work well together and when the art fits the tone of the story.
That's right. Like the author plays a lot of roles in here when it's about comics, like the scripts, also the artists play a lot of it. And what about the quality? Do you think that the quality is better nowadays, or it was better, for example, back in the 40s or in the 90s?
Hmm, it's an interesting question. It really depends because there's definitely a very different from golden age, silver age comics, so comics that were released in the 40s, 60s, and even 80s. You can see times changing, how nowadays comics are more progressive and they're not afraid to show things like members of the LGBT community. They're more inclusive of other ethnic groups, stuff like that. And older comics also tend to be more wordy. They tend to have more dialogue than newer comics. And also the dialogue itself is a little bit different. So it just kind of depends on what you like. I mean, it's kind of like when you're watching a superhero movie nowadays and you're watching a superhero movie that was made in the 70s, like the Superman movies. It's very different, but they're both still enjoyable depending on what you like.
Yeah. So which one will be an author that you will really like to meet?
Ooh, there's a lot of them that I'd really love to meet, but if I had to pick just one, it would probably be Jeff Johns. He writes a lot for DC Comics, he writes really good Green Lantern stuff, the Flash comics, and Green Lantern was actually one of the earlier comics. It was actually one of the first books that I got in my collection. So Jeff Johns has always been a really good writer, in my opinion.
So if you have to pick, for example, imagine that you have the opportunity to pick or to work with any publisher company that you want to. Which one will be?
Ooh, it's tough to say. I love superhero stuff. I love all kinds of comics, but superheroes are kind of what I got into comics for at a young age. So if I had to pick, I think it would always be a dream for me to work on something Spider-Man related. So for that reason, I'd have to go with Marvel just for Spider-Man.
And which job would you pick? Like a scriptwriter, artist?
I would love to be an artist. I can't draw, but I would love to come up with idea. Scriptwriter. Scriptwriter seems really interesting.
That's nice. Is there any comic in your collection that was really, really difficult to find?
Yes, there is. There there are there are some. I do have some books because these books they go out of print occasionally. So they'll be on sale for a while and then after they sell out, Marvel, DC, whatever publishing company, they publish the book and it'll stay out of print for years. So then you have to buy it on the third market like eBay and Amazon independent sellers, stuff like that. Because and those people they will overcharge you for the book. Like if a book normally costs $100, they will spike the price up to 200, 300. Those books are out of print. And there is one book, admittedly, that I spent more than I should have.
How
For an,
much? No.
it was the cover price of the book. So in the back of the book, it said $100, and I ended up spending like 160 on it. So it was pretty expensive, but it was one that I really, really wanted. It was an X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont.
Well, no comments. I think it was really valuable for you and really interesting, of course. And like, is there any clue to know? You were talking about the out of print. Is there any clue to know if a comic will be out of print?
Yes, you can kind of see if you just have to be active online, check Amazon, check your comic book shop and also on the popularity of the series. If you could see that a book is very popular, then it'll go out of print. But also it really depends and sometimes it's unpredictable because depending on the popularity of it, if it's really popular, it'll go out of print, but then Marvel or DC will do a second printing or a third print. So they'll keep it going, keep that income coming. But some of the books that go out of print, once they go out of print, they're gone forever, is manga. Once manga goes out of print, it's very, very difficult to find it again unless you buy it again from third-party markets. But it's pretty difficult. I wouldn't say there's a 100% accurate way to determine whether a book is going to go out of print or not.
Yeah, that's right. But now we have some advices from a comic book collector, and that is really, really valuable. But now, like, how could we know some of the difference, you know, between, or what are some differences between manga and comics?
Well, manga, for one, it's not colored. And oftentimes manga is written by one author and one artist. It's the same, it's both the author and the artist working on the same, it's the same person working on the book. Whereas for American comics, we have the author, the penciler, the inker, the letterer. So there's a lot of people involved in it. That's what I would say the main difference is. Also, I know manga tends to have different formats as well, besides the standard size books, but American books have a lot of different formats, these oversized editions, and yeah.
And also one of the difference could be like the way of the reading, you know, that is like, I think it's from
that's right.
left to right, right?
Yep, manga's read left to right. That's probably the biggest difference. And the American comics are read traditionally right to left.
Yeah, I remember that when I just first started reading manga, I was so confused. And I remember that I just read the comic, like the manga story, like the opposite. And I was like, this looks like the end. This looks like, I don't know, doesn't match. And well, that's why. Is there any Comic-Con or expo that you would recommend us to us? For example, like me, that I'm just beginning, I just want to enter into the comic world. Is there any expo that you would recommend?
Like in an event?
Yeah.
I think any comic event, even just small comic book events that are local within your community. It doesn't have to be something big like San Diego anything local, even, because even though places like San Diego Comic-Con might have guests that are very notable and people of a high status in that community, smaller comic book events will also give you the opportunity to just talk to people who are also collectors and who have had experiences and met those other people at popular Comic-Cons. So it's really just about talking to other collectors, other people who are interested in the same thing as you, and that's a good place to start.
Entonces, como una que apenas voy iniciando, una persona que apenas voy iniciando como yo, entonces ¿nos recomendarías ir y vivir la experiencia?
Yes, you should definitely try to attend every comic book event that you that you see. Anything that really interests you. I mean, it's fun, even if it doesn't have notable people, as I mentioned, or these really crazy vendors or anything like that. It's still fun just to talk to people and get out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just went to well, it was like 4 years ago. It's not recently, but I went to a event here in Guadalajara called Concomic. And even though it was called Concomic, it was just manga in there. But it was really nice. You know, you can see that like the costumes of the people that they are really like impressive. They're amazing. You know, they put a lot of effort. I was just there with my t-shirt of Superman, and they have like these really like elaborated costumes, and I was like, oh my God, like they are really, really good.
Yeah, people are always really creative with their costumes there. It's really cool. It's a really cool environment, especially for a comic book fan.
And now that we know the author that you wanted to meet, do you have an author that you will wanted to work with?
difficult to say. Well, let's see, because I said Jeff Johns, I would love to meet him, but I would also love the opportunity to work with him. But if I were to pick somebody different, oh man, it would probably have to be, I would say Chip Zdarsky. He's currently writing a lot of stuff for Spider-Man, and all of his Spider-Man stuff that he's publishing right now, or that he's writing, I think is really, really well written.
And for example, like when we talk about comics and we talk about movies, like do you have any comic that you think is accurate with the movie?
Ooh, it's let's see. Well, I think a lot of movies take elements from the comic books. They want to make it original for the most part, like the most recent Batman movie. They borrowed a lot of elements from different comics, Batman comics over the years. But if I were to say a comic book movie that is most accurate to the comic, I would say Watchmen. Watchmen directed by Zack Snyder, and then the comic written by Alan Moore, artwork by Dave Gibbons. That book and the movie it's almost page for page. Even a lot of the dialogue is copy and pasted into the movie. So some people might think that that's not that interesting because it's the exact same thing as the comic, but others think that it's really cool seeing a very accurate version of the comic book in a live action movie.
Yeah, that is right. Like everyone have their opinions. For example, it's kind of really, really interesting, that you have read all these comics, even like who direct the movie, like who write the script, that is awesome.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
and for example, like which character do you think is like the most stronger from DC and Marvel?
Oh, for DC, there's a lot of really powerful characters out there, but the most iconic one, Superman, he's, in terms of just strength, he is definitely up there. I mean, there are a lot of villains that also are capable of beating him, like Darkseid, and then everyone kind of has their weakness as well. Superman's being kryptonite, but he's definitely up there. And let's see, for Marvel, there's a lot of characters that are really really powerful. Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch is actually, I'm glad she's getting more representation in the movies, because she is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe.
And is a woman, is a woman. So that is really, really nice. How many comics do you think that are in the world? Like right now, how many should be?
How many? I have no idea. Millions. There's comic books being written, and at least here, every single Wednesday. Wednesday is comic book day. They always release weekly comic books every single Wednesday. So, and that's been going on forever. So millions and millions.
Yeah, that is crazy. Like for example, like Marvel. Well, first it was called, well, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Timely Comics.
Yeah, that's correct.
And began like in around the 30s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is crazy, like how they do that. Do you know how that works? Like to present like a comic every like Wednesday?
I don't know exactly what the process was back then during the golden age in the late 30s, 40s, around that era. I don't know what the process was then, but if it's anything like it is today, then it's just they have a schedule. They have to write script everything out, essentially write a script. The artist has to draw it out, and then they have to communicate with the letterer, the inker. Yeah, I'm not really too sure of the weekly process for it.
Yeah, but anyways, it's nice, and that must be like a really hard process, because as you said, like there is a lot of people involved, and all of them have to be like communicating with each other, because like nothing can happen if it doesn't communicate, or what,
Mhm.
or they do their magic, because it's like magic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this a lot of like like the four major ages of comics, like what is for us to know more, like what is when you talk about like the golden age, what is it?
Well, the Golden Age started. The reason they call it the Golden Age is because it's the birth of superheroes essentially. So that's the Golden Age is when all these iconic characters started getting first appearances. Batman's first appearance, Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, all of these characters kind of define the era. And that's why Golden Age issues, sometimes you'll see comics that sell for like $1 million or $500,000, stuff like that. And those are first printings of Golden Age comics most of the time. And then you move on to the 70s is the Silver Age, and there's a shift in tone and artwork there as well. And Spider-Man is probably the best example of a defining character in the Silver Age in 1962, I believe.
And what about the silver age, what is it?
The Silver Age is kind of when they wanted to they wanted to introduce new characters, but also reboot some or restart some characters, because it would be kind of crazy if we had Batman issue #1 from the 1930s and 2022 and they're still writing the exact same storyline. So they reboot it, they start all over again with new authors, new writers, new ideas. So the Silver Age, Bronze Age, it's just kind of a different era, a new start for the characters most of the time.
And for example, like which comics would you recommend for of all the four major ages of comics, like which ones would you recommend from, for example, the golden age?
It's interesting because you would think, and when I first started collecting, I thought that starting off with the Golden Age made the most sense, because I figured, oh, I should start off with the first issue of Batman if I want to get into Batman. And you can start off that way, but Golden Age comics are a little, not only are they very dialogue heavy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just some of the dialogue can seem a bit dated. Or antiquated, I guess you could say. So I personally think it's better to start off with modern. So anything that's like 90s, 2000s, even 80s stuff is a pretty good place to start. I wouldn't say anything that's 70s or before that. I would say maybe try that after you've read some more modern comics, just so you can kind of have an idea of the character and it doesn't feel so antiquated.
And which one will be your recommendations for the modern era, like for about comics?
Ooh, depends on the character. Ultimate Spider-Man is a really good run by Brian Michael Bendis. That's a very good run. For Batman, New 52, Scott Snyder with the writing, Greg Capullo with the artwork. That's a very good place for Batman. And then for Superman, I'm just saying these are the main three characters that tend to interest people and new readers especially. So for Superman, I would say Superman Rebirth by Peter J. Tomasi. That's a very new run. I think that started back in 2016. So that one's fairly new and I loved it. I thought that was one of the better runs for Superman that I've read.
And we're going to a dark side. Let's talk about billions. Which one will you say that is like the stronger billion in DC and Marvel?
Well, the two titans that are often compared for DC and Marvel, DC side, Dark Side is one, and then for Marvel, the one that everyone knows from the movies now, Thanos. He's Thanos and Darkseid are often compared with each other because both of them are these crazy mad titans and these huge forces of power in both of their universes respectively. So there are other characters that come close. Dormammu from Marvel, Mephisto. Those characters are also very strong. But if I had to say, I'd probably say between Darkseid, Thanos.
And for example, like which publisher do you prefer from all the ones that exist?
Ooh, it's tough. I love Image Comics, which is an independent publisher. Um, but if I had to pick, again with superhero stuff being something I really enjoy, DC. I love Spider-Man is my personal favorite superhero. That's kind of how I got into comics. So which is a Marvel character. But overall, when taking the entire universe as a whole, DC, I would probably go with DC. The Justice League, Green Lantern, The Flash, Batman, all of those characters, I really love them.
And for example, now that we know that your favorite character is Spider-Man, Peter Parker, what are your thoughts about this new movie that came out?
Spider-Man No Way Home.
Exactly.
Ooh, I thought it was good. It was really fun, enjoyable. I loved seeing obviously Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, mostly Tobey Maguire. He's what got me into comic books. That was probably one of the first superhero movies that I've ever really watched. So I never thought in a million years I would see him again in a live action movie. So it was really, really cool. And I thought, and I'm glad that he wasn't just a cameo or like an Easter egg that was in there for like 2 minutes of the movie. He felt like an actual character in that third arc of the movie. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, the same. And do you have any comic that is not about superheroes?
Oh yeah, I have quite a few comics that aren't superhero related. Well, yeah, I've got a lot of comics that aren't superhero related, and I have some comics that are superhero related, like Invincible is a very good series. That one, it's a superhero story, but it's not Marvel or DC.
And have you had any experience with an author or something that you really remember that it really um, took an impact on you?
Like any personal real life experiences, like me meeting the author or the artist.
Yeah.
Um, no, so unfortunately I haven't been to very many Comic Cons. I would love to go. I just haven't gotten around to attending. And San Diego Comic Con is the biggest one that I really want to attend one day. But I did go to a Comic Con near San Francisco one time, and this artist, well, this writer, his name is Steve Massaroni. He's not somebody that's necessarily a huge author for Marvel or DC, but he started off as an indie comic, a Kickstarter project where you could fund his project and try and get his comic out there. He's just a normal person, regular person, starting his comic book. And I met him, talked to him, and he seemed like a very cool guy. And he signed. I bought a copy of his book called The Silver Cord, and he signed it. And that was a pretty good experience. I still have the signed book here in my collection.
That's nice. So you have the sign book, like,
I do.
and for example, what are those posters that you have like over there? They're posters or
Yes, DC has these they call them DC poster portfolios. They sell them, and they're removable posters, and normally I don't like removing them. I like keeping them intact, but these ones behind me I thought just looked really, really cool. So I took them out and I framed them.
and what about the one that you have that says Amazing Spider-Man? What can you tell us about it?
Well, that's an iconic issue. That's the first appearance of Spider-Man. The one next to it is Detective Comics 27, first appearance of Batman. And then the one, I don't know if you could see that, but the one over here is Action Comics, first appearance of Superman. So just kind of like the big three characters in the comic book industry, their first appearances.
That's really nice, that you have it. And I'm really amazed that you know like who write it, like what number of issue, like everything, and that is really nice. So what would be some advices for people that want to start beginning into the comics, to start reading?
To start reading, Comics, well, one, collecting comic books can very quickly become an expensive hobby. So it's difficult for me to condone this, but you could always read them online. There are some websites that you could read comics for free online, but even just going to the library has or should have, I think, at least the libraries that I've seen near where I live, they have graphic novel section, and they have plenty of. It's not as extensive as a comic book shop, obviously, but they do have a lot of the really iconic stories like Watchmen, V for Vendetta, some of the classic Batman stuff, anything like that you can find at a library. So that's a good place to start and just check out the books and see what you like and maybe buy some comic books at your local comic book shop.
Yeah, thank you for the advices. And for example, what will be, I'm curious about it because I don't know too much about comics. What will be the difference? Because for example, I tend to confuse, graphic novels with comics. Like what will be the difference?
Well, I mean, comics and graphic novels depends on the person that you ask, but some people will say they're kind of the term is interchangeable. But I guess my personal definition is comic books would be more of a single issue and graphic novels would be more of a collected edition. So a collection of single issues all bound together in one book that completes a whole story. That's what I would consider a graphic novel.
Thank you. And which one is your favorite manga?
Ooh. There's a lot of really good manga out there. I'm actually currently reading through Berserk by Kentaro Miura, and I've read 9 volumes of that. Well, 9 of the deluxe hardcovers, so 27 of the individual volumes so far, and that's really really good. But if I had to pick a personal favorite, probably it would be Naruto. I know it's a very popular one, a popular shonen jump, but Naruto was the first manga that, or the first anime that I ever watched. So I read the manga and I loved it just as much as I love the anime. So that one kind of holds a special place in my heart. So for that reason, I would pick Naruto.
Yeah, Naruto definitely one of my favorites. Like the story, practically you met him when he was a child and he started growing up and his dream to become a Hokage and everything. Like it's really really nice. Um, and what would be, your favorite or well, not the favorite, well, your favorite manga, but that you have more volumes about it.
Um, like which manga do I have the most volumes for?
Yeah.
Naruto as well. That's a very long series. I have all 72 volumes of that. So that's probably the largest manga. Um, and second place would be Dragon Ball. I have all of them. I think there's 43 volumes around there.
And for comics books, like which one will be the one that you have more volumes about?
Ooh. That one, let's see. Well, Invincible is a pretty long series. There's 12 hardcover books for those. And I own the series from start to finish. Um, that one takes up quite a bit of shelf space.
And do you think, for example, that, for example, in comics, it will be for the end, like definitely the end for a superhero, like they stop publishing volumes.
I don't think so. I think they're going to keep publishing superhero comics as long as people are interested in them. And right now, we're kind of living in a golden age for comic book characters again, because with all these movies coming out, especially the Marvel ones, there's a lot of publicity and representation for these characters on the big screen. So we're getting more people that are interested in comic books that haven't been before. So I think they're going to keep publishing, and I think they'll keep publishing comic books forever, pretty much.
So you think that they will keep, that like format in paper, or will later change on to like the digital format?
I do know some people collect comic books only because they enjoy the convenience of having the comic book on your phone or on your laptop and taking it wherever on the go. And I understand that, but I think comic books will kind of always be on paper. I don't think they'll ever stop doing that, just because at least personally, I enjoy reading comic books. I enjoy seeing it in my hand. And the big thing for me is the artwork. Even though the artwork is amazing either way, I prefer seeing the artwork in person than seeing it on a computer screen or on my phone.
Yeah, that is really nice. I also think that, for example, also like the physical format give more like this that is yours, that you can have it, you can touch it, you can like see
Mhm.
around it, and you can like, yeah, you can touch it, you can feel the texture of the paper. Sometimes like the scent, that the new when it's new.
Yeah, the new book smell.
And with which character do you identify more and why?
Ooh. I think Spider-Man actually. Um, just because back then during the Spider-Man was a Silver Age character, but going back to the Golden Age, most of the characters weren't very relatable. To say like Batman was really cool, but he's a rich millionaire, and I feel like a lot of people, most of the world isn't rich millionaires. So Batman was kind of unrelatable in that sense. Superman is literally an alien from outer space. uh, Iron Man from Marvel also being rich. So there's a lot of characters that weren't really relatable. But when Spider-Man was released in the 70s, or in the 60s, my bad, during the Silver Age, he was one of the first characters where he was actually a high school student. He didn't have the best looks. He wasn't very rich. And he was just kind of like your average teenager trying to find their place. And I think that a lot of people can relate with that.
Yeah, I think that is, like as you said, something that is relatable, that also have like personal problems, like for example, like economic problems, or as you said, like finding our place in the society and everything, finding a job, also like keeping your job.
Mhm.
And I think that is really, really nice. And for example, do you have, before saying goodbye, do you have any like comments that you would like to say?
I would say if you're not already interested or you're not already reading comic books, check them out. Anything really. It doesn't have to be superhero related. It can be an independent publisher, even manga. Just try it out. Maybe you'll really enjoy looking at the artwork and the author. They work when you can find a pair that works really well together. It creates a very unique way of storytelling.
Thank you. I also think the same, that you have to also just give it a chance, give it a shot. If you like it, you like it, and it's not, like, let it go. But also try it, like try it. There are also new things. And well, thank you so much for your time, Oscarito. It was really nice to talk with you, Oscar. Thank you so much. My English is not the best, so sorry.
Oh, it's
um,
it's it's good. It's great.
Thank you. And where where can we find you in social media?
Social media is Instagram, and it is spider underscore two underscore, so underscore underscore, and then bruh, BRUH.
Thank you, Spider Bra. Um, well, it was really nice talking to you. You can find him, as we said, as Spider Bra on Instagram. He is active. He's going to post something really soon. And well, thank you for your time. It was really nice. We
Thank you for
hope.
having me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk with you and to know more about comics. And we both hope that this helps you to introduce you more about the comics, the experience that he had collecting, and that, well, he's going to continue collecting. So thank you so much, Oscar.
Muchas gracias por ver, suscríbete, dale like si te gustó este video, compártelo si es que fue atorado Y te recuerdo las redes sociales de Oscar. Puedes seguirlo en Instagram como spider_pro. Te recuerdo mis redes sociales. Puedes seguirme en Instagram como Ana Warren 2021, en donde les comparto que muy pronto me estaré presentando en un espacio referente a la capital mundial del libro. En la Feria Municipal de Guadalajara me dieron un espacio para presentar. Ojalá me pudieran acompañar, va a ser de manera virtual. El libro lo pueden encontrar ya en su venta en Amazon. Muchísimas gracias por ver y nos vemos en un próximo video.